Emma sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. Watching the late afternoon sun spill golden light across the empty street, the house felt quieter than usual. And she couldn't help but notice the silence that had settled over her life in the last few months. Her husband, David, had been busy with long hours at work, and her stepson, Liam, seemed to live in his own world. Retreating into his room as soon as he came home from school, Emma loved her family deeply. But there were moments when she felt invisible, like she was standing on the outside of a world she longed to truly be part of. She often smiled at Liam in the kitchen or tried to start a conversation. But most of the time her words were met with polite nods or quiet responses. She understood, of course, change was hard for children, and she had entered his life slowly, carefully, trying not to disrupt the rhythm he had known for years. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was a wall between them, one she couldn't quite figure out how to tear down. Today, though, something felt different. Emma could feel it in the air, in the way the sun warmed her shoulders and the faint scent of fallen leaves drifting through the slightly open window. She had decided she wouldn't let another quiet weekend slip by without trying, without attempting to reach Liam in a way that felt real and genuine. She wanted to create a moment, even a small one, that could become a bridge between them. Taking a deep breath, she rose from the window seat and walked down the hall, pausing at Liam's bedroom door. She could hear the faint hum of his computer, the occasional click of a mouse. For a moment, she considered just letting him be, as she often did, and walked past the door. But something inside her shifted. She couldn't let another day pass without trying. "Hey, Liam," she said softly, knocking gently. "Can I come in for a second?" The room was dim, sunlight barely spilling in through the blinds. Liam looked up from his screen, his expression guarded. Emma noticed the way his fingers hovered over the keyboard, like he wasn't sure whether to let her in or shut her out. "Guess," he muttered, his voice quiet but not unkind. Emma stepped inside, keeping her tone light. "I was thinking, maybe we could do something together this weekend. Just the two of us. No pressure, no big plans, just you and me." Liam hesitated. For a moment, he looked down at his shoes, then back at her. "Maybe," he said again, this time a little firmer. Emma smiled gently, feeling a glimmer of hope. She knew it wasn't a resounding yes, but it was a beginning. And sometimes a beginning was all that was needed to change everything. She sat down on the edge of his bed, careful not to invade his space, and continued softly. "I know things have been different since I moved in. I know it hasn't always been easy for you. And I want you to know that I get it. I'm not trying to replace anyone or force you to like me. Want to be part of your life in a way that feels okay for you?" There was a long pause. Liam's eyes flickered with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Emma had learned over time that moments like these, small and quiet as they seemed, were the ones that mattered the most. This was not about grand gestures or trying to win him over with gifts or games. It was about showing up, patiently and sincerely, and letting him see that she cared. Finally, Liam spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I guess I'd like that too. I just didn't know how to say it." Emma's heart swelled. She reached out and ruffled his hair gently, a gesture full of warmth, but careful to respect his space. "Thank you for telling me, Liam. That means a lot." They sat together in silence for a few moments. The kind of silence that wasn't awkward or tense, but quiet and safe as silence that promised understanding and connection. Emma realized something important then. Love and trust were not about instant results or dramatic displays. They were built in small moments like this, moments where hearts quietly opened just a little, enough to let in hope. As she rose to leave, Emma felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. This weekend would be their chance, maybe not to solve everything at once, but to take a small, meaningful step toward understanding each other. She could feel the possibility of change, the faint spark of connection that might finally bring them closer. Walking back to the kitchen, she glanced once more at Liam, who had returned to his screen, but now with a small, almost imperceptible smile. It wasn't much, but it was enough. And for Emma, it was the beginning of something she had quietly longed for: a family, not just living together under one roof, but hearts slowly reaching for each other. And in that golden afternoon light, Emma made a silent promise to herself. She would cherish every small moment, every quiet laugh, every shared word, until Liam knew, truly knew, that she was there to stay. The next morning, the sun streamed softly through the curtains, painting the living room in warm shades of gold. Emma could hear the distant hum of cars on the street and the occasional chirp of birds outside. But inside, the house felt unusually still. She poured herself a cup of coffee, savoring the quiet. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Liam. She remembered the first day. She had arrived at this house a mix of excitement and fear. David had greeted her with his familiar warmth, but Liam had retreated to his room, his small body rigid with unease. Emma had tried to break the ice, leaving little notes on his desk, offering to help with homework, or simply asking about his day. Most of the time, her words had fallen into a void of silence. But then, there had been small moments, tiny flashes of connection that she clung to like lifelines. The afternoon when Liam had tripped on his shoelace while rushing to the bus stop, and Emma had caught him just in time. His initial scowl had softened into a reluctant smile, and for a moment she had glimpsed the boy behind the walls he had built. And there was the rainy evening when the power had gone out. Liam had insisted he was fine alone. But Emma had brewed hot chocolate anyway and sat on the floor with him, playing card games by candlelight. He had laughed that night, a quiet, genuine sound that stayed with her long after he had gone to bed. These moments were fleeting, often overshadowed by months of quiet tension and distance. Liam had always loved his mother, and she knew that no matter how carefully she navigated her role as a stepmother, there would always be an invisible line she couldn't cross, one built from years of history, comfort, and loss. But Emma also knew that bonds were not erased by time. They could grow slowly in the spaces between small gestures, shared laughter, and quiet understanding. Today felt like one of those moments. Liam had agreed hesitantly to spend part of the weekend with her, and Emma sensed a fragile thread of trust forming. She reminded herself to move carefully, to honor the past while gently shaping the present. Later that morning, she knocked lightly on Liam's door. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "I thought we could go for a walk. Just around the neighborhood. Nothing fancy." Liam peeked out from behind the door, his hair slightly messy from sleep, his eyes wary but curious. "Okay," he said, grabbing his jacket as they walked side by side along the familiar streets. Emma found herself reflecting on how much Liam had grown since the day she had arrived. He still had his stubborn streak, his quiet ways of retreating when things felt too overwhelming. But she could see glimpses of trust beginning to show. "Do you remember last year," Emma began cautiously, "when you showed me your secret treehouse in the backyard?" Liam's eyes widened, and a small, surprised smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. I thought you'd think it was dumb," he said, laughing softly. "Dumb." Emma laughed too. "Not at all. I thought it was amazing. You built that all by yourself. I even remember how proud you looked when you climbed up there and showed me every little detail." He paused, a thoughtful look crossing his face. "Yeah, I guess I was proud." Emma nodded. "You should be. I loved being part of that moment with you. Even if you didn't think you wanted me there, I was happy to see it through your eyes." They walked on, the sunlight falling across their path, and Emma noticed how Liam began pointing out things he used to love about the neighborhood. Old trees where he had played hide and seek, the corner store where he had bought his first comic book, the small park bench where he and David used to sit and talk. With each memory, a piece of the wall between them seemed to crumble. For Emma, it was bittersweet. She loved hearing these stories, seeing the joy in his eyes. But she also understood the subtle sadness that lingered beneath them. Liam had experienced love and connection in ways that she had not been part of, and that gap could not be ignored. Still, these stories were not barriers, they were bridges. Gentle invitations into his world. At one point, Liam stopped and looked at her. "I didn't think we'd ever get here," he admitted quietly. I mean, I didn't think I'd let anyone in. Emma's heart tightened. She reached out and brushed a strand of hair from his face. I know, and that's okay. You don't have to. But I hope you know that I'm here, and I want to be someone you can trust, someone you can count on. He nodded, the briefest glimmer of a smile appearing again. It was a small victory, but for Emma, it felt monumental. They continued walking, their conversation flowing more easily now. Laughter sprinkled in between the stories. The past had shaped them, yes, but it no longer felt like a it felt like a foundation on which something new could grow by the time they returned home. Emma felt lighter than she had in months. Liam's quiet. The next afternoon, the sky was a soft gray, clouds stretching low but promising no rain. Emma suggested they take a walk to the small riverside trail a few blocks away, a place she hadn't visited much but that Liam seemed to enjoy as a child. Liam hesitated at first, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. It's kind of chilly, he muttered, his tone casual but uncertain. Emma smiled, sensing a quiet challenge in his words. I have a good excuse to warm up on the walk, she teased lightly, and I think the view might make it worth it. Reluctantly, Liam agreed, and together they stepped onto the trail. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp leaves and the distant sound of water flowing over rocks. The trail curved gently along the river, lined with trees whose leaves had begun their slow descent into autumn as they walked. Emma noticed Liam slowing down, scanning the trail ahead with a thoughtful look. She didn't say anything, letting him set the pace. She had learned that patience was more powerful than encouragement, especially with him. Suddenly, Liam stopped and pointed toward a small wooden bench partially hidden under a willow tree. I used to come here a lot, he said quietly. I mean, with my mom. I liked sitting here when things felt complicated. Emma nodded, understanding immediately the weight behind his words. It must have been special to you, she said gently. Liam shrugged, avoiding her gaze. Yeah, it was. I guess I never thought about it much until now. Emma took a careful step closer. I'm glad you're telling me this, Liam. I want to know the places and moments that matter to you. Even if they're part of your past, they help me understand you better. For a long moment, Liam looked away, staring at the flowing river. Then, without warning, he bent down to pick up a small fallen leaf, examining it closely before letting it drift back into the water. Emma watched, feeling a quiet sense of connection growing. You know, she said softly, sometimes the things we miss the most aren't people or places, they're the feelings we had in those moments. And it's okay to feel them again, even now. Liam's lips twitched in the faintest hint of a smile. I never thought of it that way, he admitted. They continued along the trail, their conversation shifting from memories to small present details, funny incidents at school, the new comic book he had started reading, the way the river glimmered in the afternoon light. Emma noticed a subtle change in him. He was more relaxed, more open, more willing to share than she had seen in months. Just as she was beginning to feel the warmth of this small, perfect afternoon, something unexpected happened. A small dog darted out of the trees, barking playfully, and ran directly toward Liam. Startled, he took a step back, almost tripping over a tree root. Emma reached out instinctively, catching his arm just in time. Thanks, Liam said, his voice soft, and for a brief second their eyes met in a way that was both tender and reassuring. Emma felt a flutter of emotion she hadn't expected, a sudden awareness of how close they had become, how fragile and beautiful this trust between them really was. The dog bounded around them for a moment, wagging its tail before its owner appeared from the trail, apologizing as she leashed it. Liam laughed quietly, shaking his head. That was unexpected, he said. Emma nodded, her heart still lightly racing. Life has a funny way of reminding us to be present, she said. Sometimes a small twist, a little surprise, can make us notice things we might have missed. For the first time, Liam looked directly at her, his usual caution softened by curiosity and trust. Yeah, he agreed, a hint of warmth in his voice. I think I'm noticing things I didn't before. They walked on, side by side, the river flowing steadily beside them. Emma could feel an invisible thread tightening between them, not one of obligation or pressure, but of genuine connection, quiet understanding that they were no longer just two people in the same space, but two hearts learning to meet halfway. Emma thought back to all the small moments, the early breakfasts, the hurried homework sessions, the shared laughter at clumsy mistakes. Each one had been a tiny step toward this present moment, toward the understanding that families were not defined solely by blood, but by patience, love, and the willingness to see one another fully as they neared the end of the trail. Liam suddenly stopped and picked up another leaf, turning it over in his hands. I think I'm glad you came into our lives," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I wasn't sure at first, but I think it's better this way." Emma felt a surge of emotion, her chest tightening with both relief and joy. "I'm glad too, Liam. I've wanted this for all of us for a long time," she said. He nodded, slipping the leaf into his pocket. I want to keep making these moments, even if they're small, even if they're just little things." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. It was exactly what she had hoped for. A subtle, unspoken agreement, a mutual desire to grow closer without force or hurry. Fate, coincidence, or the gentle rhythm of life itself had brought them here. And Emma realized that these small, seemingly ordinary twists could sometimes carry the most extraordinary meaning as they walked back home. The clouds began to part slightly, letting in rays of afternoon sunlight. Emma glanced at Liam, who walked with a newfound ease. And she felt a quiet certainty that this weekend, this present moment, was the beginning of a bond that would last. Not rushed, not forced, but real, heartfelt, and tender. And in that gentle, golden light, Emma understood that life didn't always need grand gestures or dramatic revelations to heal hearts. Sometimes a small twist, a shared memory, an unexpected laugh, a fleeting moment was enough to change everything. By the time evening settled over the house, the sky had turned a soft lavender streaked with pink and orange. Emma and Liam returned from their walk, their cheeks flushed from the crisp air and quiet laughter. The day had been simple, yet it carried a weight of unspoken words, moments neither of them had fully voiced, but both had felt deeply. Emma busied herself in the kitchen, preparing a small snack while Liam sat at the table, tracing the edge of a coaster with his finger. The room was warm, filled with the faint smell of cinnamon and toasted bread. Emma could hear Liam's soft humming, a habit she hadn't noticed before, and it stirred something tender in her heart. "Do you want some apple slices?" she asked, breaking the silence gently. Liam glanced up, and for a fleeting second their eyes met. There was a hesitation there, a quiet pause loaded with unspoken thoughts. He nodded. "Yeah, thanks." Emma smiled softly, placing the plate in front of him. She wanted to ask more, to probe gently into the quiet tension she sensed between them, but she knew better than to push. Some things needed to unfold naturally. As Liam reached for an apple slice, he spoke without looking up. You were really nice today. I mean, the way you listened and all. It was different from before." Emma felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. "I'm glad," she said quietly. "I've been hoping we could have days like this. Days where we can just be." He paused, chewing slowly, and then muttered almost to himself, "I didn't think I'd ever let anyone in like this." "Not really." Emma's heart tightened. She could feel the weight of his words, the quiet admission of vulnerability he had been carrying for months. "You don't have to rush anything, Liam," she said gently. "It's okay to take your time." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers for just a moment before dropping again. "I know, but it's hard, Sometimes I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel. It's confusing." Emma nodded, understanding more than he could know. It's supposed to be confusing sometimes. Feelings aren't simple, and that's okay. What matters is that you're honest with yourself. A long pause followed. The room felt heavy with unspoken truths, a quiet space where longing and hesitation hovered. Emma could sense that Liam wanted to say more, to reach out emotionally. But something inside him held back a fear of change, a fear of disappointment. a fear of letting someone into a world he had guarded for years. Emma, too, felt her own hesitation. She wanted to tell him how much she admired his courage, how much she valued his trust. But she also knew that expressing her feelings too directly might overwhelm him. So she stayed quiet, letting the moment linger, letting the emotions speak without words. Finally, Liam broke the silence. I like spending time with you," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "Even if I don't always show it." Kama felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. "I like spending time with you too," she replied, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "More than you might know." For a few minutes they sat in silence, the weight of their shared feelings hanging between them. It was not dramatic or rushed, but quiet and profound, the kind of connection built on patience, understanding, and the courage to acknowledge emotions without fear. "You know," Liam said finally, glancing toward the window where the first stars were beginning to appear, "I think I've been scared of feeling things like this, like liking someone and trusting them. It feels new, and I don't always know how to handle it." Emma reached over and gently rested her hand near his on the table, careful not to push but offering reassurance. "That's okay," she said softly. "Feeling something new is always a little scary, but it's also wonderful. You're allowed to feel it, to take your time, and to trust it." He didn't speak immediately, but his fingers twitched slightly toward hers, almost a subtle acknowledgement of her words. The sigh. The next morning the house felt different, lighter somehow, yet full of anticipation. Emma sat at the kitchen table sipping her coffee, while Liam quietly ate his breakfast, his movements slower than usual. As if he were weighing something heavy on his mind, Emma had noticed the small changes over the weekend. The way Liam smiled more readily, the subtle gestures of trust, the moments when he sought her presence without hesitation. Yet something felt unsaid, a tension lingering beneath the surface. Waiting for the right moment to surface, it came unexpectedly during the quiet lull of Saturday afternoon. David had stepped out to run errands, leaving Emma and Liam alone in the living room. Liam sat on the couch, fiddling with a small model airplane he had been building for weeks, his eyes distant. Emma sat nearby, knitting quietly, giving him space, but remaining present. Finally, Liam set the airplane down and let out a long sigh. Emma watched him, sensing the weight of unspoken thoughts pressing on him. "Liam," she said softly, "you seem different today. Is there something on your mind?" He hesitated, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the couch cushion. Emma's heart beat faster. She had learned to recognize the subtle signs, the way he avoided eye contact, the small hesitations before speaking. She knew that when he finally spoke, it would be something important. I've been thinking," he began, his voice quiet, almost fragile, "about everything. About how things were before, how things are now. And I guess I'm scared." Emma nodded gently, encouraging him without pressing. "Scared of what?" she asked, her voice steady and warm. He took a deep breath, looking down at the floor. "Scared of losing you, I guess. Scared that I'll mess things up, or that I'll feel something I don't understand." Emma's chest tightened. She had felt this tension tooth, the unspoken longing, the fear of change, the desire for connection tempered by hesitation. "You won't lose me, Liam," she said softly, leaning a little closer. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." He glanced up at her then, his eyes wide and uncertain. "But what if I'm too late? What if? What if I can't show how much I care? Or I don't know how to do this right?" Emma reached out, resting her hand gently on his. "You're not too late," she said, her voice filled with quiet conviction. "Caring isn't about getting it perfect. It's about trying and about being honest with your heart. That's enough." Liam swallowed hard, his lips pressing together as though holding back words that had been trapped for too long. I've wanted to say it for a long time," he admitted, voice trembling slightly. I like having you here. I like you, Emma, not just as someone in the house, but as someone I can trust. Someone who makes things better." Emma felt a rush of emotion, relief, joy, tenderness, and pride all mingling together. She squeezed his hand gently. I like having you here too, Liam, more than you might know. And I've wanted to hear you say that just as much as you've wanted to say it. The room was quiet for a moment, save for the soft ticking of the wall clock. The words hung in the air, unspoken for months, but finally given life. Emma noticed how his shoulders relaxed, how the tension in his jaw softened. It was as though the act of speaking the truth had lifted a weight he hadn't even realized he was carrying. Liam shifted slightly, small, tentative smile forming. I was afraid that if I said it, things would change too fast. Or I'd ruin it. Emma shook her head gently. Nothing can ruin this. What we have? This trust, this bond. It's real. Saying it out loud doesn't change it strengthens it. He looked down at his hands for a moment, then back at her, his eyes bright with quiet determination. I want to try. To keep being honest, to keep building this. Us, Emma's heart swelled. We'll do it together, she said, her voice steady but full of warmth. One step at a time with patience and care. That's all it takes. For a long moment, they sat together, hands touching, sharing a silence that was no longer heavy but full of hope. Emma realized that this moment of honesty, this turning point, was more powerful than anything she had imagined. Words had finally met the truth in their hearts, and the connection between them felt tangible, almost sacred. Liam's small smile widened into a more confident one. His usual hesitation softened by the relief of having shared his feelings. Thank you, he whispered, for waiting. And for understanding. Emma smiled back, tears threatening to spill, but kept them in check. Thank you, Liam, for trusting me. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. And in that quiet Saturday afternoon, in a living room warmed by sunlight and the bond of honesty, both of them felt it, the turning point. A moment when fear gave way to trust, hesitation gave way to openness. And the long-unspoken truth finally found its voice. From that day forward, Emma knew their journey together would not be perfect. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and new emotions to navigate. But she also knew that with honesty, patience, and shared vulnerability, they could face anything together and that the love they were building was strong enough to last. It wasn't a dramatic declaration or a sweeping gesture. It was simply two hearts meeting in truth. And in that, they found everything they had been searching for. The next morning, sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the living room. The house felt peaceful, the kind of quiet that only comes after moments of shared honesty and emotional growth. Emma moved about the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast, while Liam quietly set the table, small smile tugging at his lips. There was a lightness in the air that hadn't been there before, a subtle sense that something fundamental had shifted. It wasn't something loud or dramatic, it was in the small gestures. The way Liam lingered for a moment to hand her the juice glass, the way Emma paused to listen when he spoke, fully present. As David returned from his errands, he noticed the change immediately. His eyes softened as he took in the scene. Emma and Liam sharing breakfast. A sense of ease and connection between them that had been missing for months. You two look different, David said with a grin, setting his keys down. Something good happened while I was gone. Emma smiled warmly. Just a little progress, she said, her eyes meeting Liam's. He nodded shyly, a glimmer of pride in his expression. It wasn't a moment for words. It was a quiet acknowledgement that their family was finding its rhythm again. After breakfast, Emma suggested they spend the afternoon together. Maybe just sitting outside in the backyard or taking another short walk. Liam agreed immediately, his enthusiasm bright and genuine. They stepped into the backyard, the crisp air carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. Liam wandered toward the small garden where he had planted flowers the previous spring, and Emma followed, keeping pace but allowing him the space to explore. You know, Liam began quietly, I didn't think all of this, could feel like this. I mean, being with both of you, feeling safe and happy. I didn't know it was possible. Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. His words were simple, but they carried a weight of truth and longing, a recognition of the journey they had all been on. "I'm glad you feel that way," she said softly. "It means a lot to hear it from you." He looked at her, the vulnerability in his eyes mirrored in the gentle curve of his lips. "I'm glad you're here too, Emma. I really mean that." Emma's chest swelled with emotion. She wanted to say so much more, but instead she let the silence speak, letting the trust and connection between them fill the space naturally. There was no need for grand declarations. What mattered was the quiet understanding that had finally been reached as the afternoon wore on. They played a simple game of catch in the yard, laughter echoing lightly in the air. It was not the exuberance of a perfect moment, but the understated joy of genuine connection, the kind that leaves a lasting impression on the heart. Emma noticed the way Liam's posture had relaxed, the way his laughter had come freely, without hesitation. Each shared smile, each light-hearted comment, was a testament to the bond they had nurtured over months of patience and understanding. Later, as they rested on the garden bench, Liam leaned back against the wood, gazing at the sky. I'm starting to understand something," he said, almost to himself. "That families aren't just about being together. They're about caring and being honest and showing up, even when it's hard." Emma reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his face gently. "Exactly," she whispered. "And you've shown so much courage this weekend. You've trusted, shared, and opened your heart. That's what makes a family: love, patience, and being there for each other." He turned to her, eyes bright with understanding, and offered a small smile. I want to keep building this, not just for today, but for tomorrow and the days after that." Emma smiled back, feeling a sense of completion she hadn't known she needed. "We'll do it together," she said. "One step at a time, just like we've been doing." As evening approached, the three of them gathered in the living room. David suggested a simple movie night, popcorn in hand, and Emma and Liam readily agreed. They sat together on the couch, close but not crowded, a warmth spreading through the room that went beyond the physical. It was the warmth of belonging, of hearts finally meeting halfway. For Emma, the weekend had been transformative. It had started with small gestures, tentative conversations, and careful patience, but it had led to a breakthrough, a moment when unspoken emotions were finally